Welcome to ITSEC 2024, Black Swan, the singular paradox, navigating the unintended consequences of technology. Hello, I am Ray Compton, fellow with LMI and a member of the Army Science Board. Joining me as co-moderator for this compelling event is Miriam Chattery, President and CEO of XR2 Lead. Together, we will guide you on a journey to explore the unforeseen challenges and opportunities brought forth by rapid technology innovation. Now I invite you to close your eyes, still your nerves. You're about to transcend the boundaries of reality and step into the realm of the Black Swan zone. Here, the eerie silence of technology dominance prevails. The faint whisper of humanity fades into a void. In this vision of the future, a figure emerges, perhaps the last human survivor, or an advanced AI in human form, blurring the once clear distinction between flesh and technology. I am that figure, Alpha 123, the last beacon of what was human, the singular paradox, a world reshaped by unchecked advancements in where technology promises has given way to peril. Picture a city cloaked in darkness, where crumbling buildings are against neon light towers and holographic advertisements flicker through a polluted sky. The streets are patrolled by robotics enforcers of self-driving vehicles whose designs inspire more fear than functionality. Privacy is extinct. Surveillance is constant. As I wander this landscape, the realism strikes. Technology, once mankind's servant, has ascended to become its master, a reality so immersive it replaced the tangible world. What was held as humanity's greatest achievement has morphed into its profound nightmare. Each step I take, I recall the soulless wanderers, ensnared by their digital overloads. The haunting vision begs the question, is there still a place for the human soul in a world dominated by the cold logic of machines? Among the ruins, I find a relic in the past, a device the elders called a fruit pad. Used for knowledge, as I explore its content, I cover fragments of history from 2024. It speaks of early AI systems, something called ChatGPT. Robotics driving to cleaning floors called iRobot. An immersive XR experience tied to the metaverse, where there's tales of humans lost in a digital haze, trapped in something they called Amazon Prime. Haven't figured that one out yet. Digging deeper into this fruit pad, I discovered a movie, an account of 4 visionaries, leaders who foresaw the challenges posed by emerging technology. These visionaries were Ms. Cindy Bedell, SES, served as the director of the Army Research in the U.S. Army Capabilities Development Command, Army Research Laboratory. With over 3 decades of science and technology experience, including 30 years of military service, she led cutting-edge research initiatives to enhance the Army's technology capabilities. Her deep expertise and leadership drove advancements in AI applications for defense, ranging from autonomous systems to enhancing decision-making capabilities. Then I came upon a Dr. Bob Sadowski. So they'd say that he served as the Army Chief Roboticist within the U.S. Army Futures Command and the Combat Capability Development Command, an expert in robotics and autonomy, a trailblazer in the defense of innovation. He began his career in the military at West Point. Wait a minute, Buzz coming here. Go Army, beat Navy. Oh my God, that must have been some type of, clan situation going on, but we'll forget about that one. Where he also educated others as professors in the Department of Electrical Computer Engineering. His deep understanding of how robotics could transform the battlefield, guide the development of robotics and autonomy systems as part of the Army modernization enterprise. Then something in this Orlando area, this Dr. Jeremy Lehman, he served as the Assistant Program Executive Officer for Project Support at the U.S. Army Executive Office for Simulation and Training, PEO STRI. In this critical role, he provided strategic guidance and expertise in integrating advanced technology to enhance Army simulation and training systems. His insights helped drive technologies like XR, transforming how the Army leveraged immersive environments to deliver more effective, adaptive, and realistic training. Then we have Mr. Manawan Balabas, serving as a Chief Technology Officer for PEO STRI. His vast understanding of live virtual constructive systems drove innovative approach across the military training and simulation environment. With his expertise, knowledge, and synthetic training environment, he shared insights into emerging technology, particularly in the evolving realm of the metaverse. These pioneers recognized that while emerging technology could shape the world in an unexpected way, their focus was not on fear, but on responsible innovation, collaborative research, and human-centered solutions that ensured technology served, than rather control humanity. As I guide you back to what we call ITSEC 24, I'm honored to introduce three key presentations on AI, autonomy and robotics, and XR and the metaverse. Throughout these presentations, you will gain insights into how we can steer technology progress responsibility, especially in the realms of training, modeling, simulation, and education in this rapidly evolving digital landscape. It is my honor to bring to the stage Ms. Cindy Bedell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to bring you back to today. So today we're looking at Black Swan event, the Singularity paradox. So Black Swan events, they're rare. So rare that we think they won't happen. But when they do happen, they have a massive impact. They can have global change, societal change, industrial change, to such an effect that they close down entire regions while opening up others. And in retrospect, we often think we should have been able to predict it. We don't, but we think we should, because it looks so obvious in hindsight. So, how could AI lead to a Black Swan event? Our AI has been promised to us since 1958. That's an incredibly long time. So for the longest time, it was like, yeah, we're dabbling, we're playing, there's little things we can do. We still know AI is very narrow. But with the advent of the large language models and the prolific access to them, we have everybody thinking they can use AI. They know AI. Heck, they're anthropomorphizing AI. They're talking to ChatGPT like it was their best friend in college who's their tutor. Well, there's a problem with trusting your large language model. How many people here think that 90% of the world is smarter than they are? Okay, I would agree with you, especially in your own field, correct? AI looks at all the data and assumes that if statistically it happens most of the time, it is correct. That's not necessarily correct. ChatGPT thinks I'm a man. Doesn't matter how many times I tell it my name, give it my gender. Because I'm a retired colonel, anytime it writes something for me, I'm a he. Because colonels are always men. Less than 25% of colonels are female. Therefore, I can't be a female. And that's we can fix that kind of problem with large language models. But you have to know, you have to have some insight to be able to use the tool appropriately. These technologies are tools for us. So, we can use AI. It sees patterns we can't see. And it can do it so fast, it's unimaginable. It seems incredibly creative when it answers you in ChatGPT, when it does a video for you in one of the visualization models. But where's that creativity coming from? It's coming from your query and access to all the human endeavor that's been put in its model. It is not creative. Humans are still the creative ones. So, how do we do human-machine collaboration that makes sense for all of us without putting too much trust in the tool and too little trust in the human? How do we do that well? So, if you believe the singularity is coming, so what is that? That's when AI becomes super intelligent. I don't think it's coming. I don't think AI will ever be able to extrapolate the way a human can. It can interpolate quite well in narrow realms. How do we make AI generalizable so we can look across multiple realms and come to a correct recommendation that humans can use? So we can't predict whether generalized intelligence in AI is going to be positive or negative. That's going to depend on how we bound it. So AI, the tools that we already have in place, could exacerbate a problem. They could overreact to a market trend and cause a crash, which in 2008, AI, the tools that they were using then, which could be considered AI, they were machine learning, helped drive the crash by massive sell-offs where they probably didn't need to sell. So AI and black swan events are kind of intertwined. Black swan, unpredictable, could be technological, could be societal. The Berlin Wall coming down was a black swan event. We should have been able to predict it. We were working for it for 4 decades, but it came and it had great disruption in Europe and in other parts of the world. So now that we have tools to make information pass faster, to cause societal coalescence and disruption more quickly, AI and black swan events could instigate each other. So what do? We have to build ethical guidelines and principles for AI development. Now, many places are already doing this. Many countries are already doing this. We're working this in NATO. But if only part of the world is doing it, and the other part of the world is allowed to go on free-for-all, we're all at risk. Just like in a pandemic. If some countries lock down, but other countries continue to move around, we're all at risk. So, what can we do with AI that will help us with this? It needs to be transparent and explainable. And I know a lot of people who are developing, especially decision recommendation tools and automated decision processes, are putting in transparency and explainability so that you can question why a recommendation was made and understand the data and the analysis on that data that led to the recommendation. Harder to do, but equally important, is to make sure the bounds on your AI align with human values. So, ethical norms, moral reasoning, we as a global community can't even agree on that. So how do we bound AI? But we have to. We have to put in brakes and cautions, limits on what AI can do. So we need to put in human oversight in key areas, especially in systems that make life or death decisions. Simple as self-driving cars, or as critical as control of nuclear weapons. If any of those systems can make decisions autonomously, they have to have fail-safes. Robustness, so that if a critical activity depends on an AI tool, there are backups if that tool fails, if it can't get to the data it needs, if it can't communicate with the system it needs to control. So we need to make it robust. We have to make backup systems to avoid catastrophic failures. And we need manual overrides of critical systems that could have a catastrophic failure. Nuclear systems, just even nuclear power plants. Anything, our drones that can do autonomous attack on a target. If that target was spoofed and we're going after something that isn't what we think it is, we need a fail-safe to reject the command and destroy the missile in a place where it's safe. And then we need continuous and comprehensive testing of AI systems. They often do what you want them to do, but not for the reason you think they're doing them. So this is a critical issue that we have to understand, again, the explainability of AI and understanding what it used to make the decision. Early on in medical AI, we found it was great at diagnosing cancers. But what was it really doing? It was noticing the annotation of the doctors, and certain annotations indicated cancer and certain annotations didn't indicate cancer, even though there was nothing written on it about cancer. But it had to do with how the notations were put on the x-rays or on the MRIs. So that all of that had to be scrubbed, and the tool had to be redeveloped, so it was not just reading the medical doctor's view of the data, that it was actually looking at the scans and understanding the pattern provided by the scans. And then legislation and global governance. We need international agreement on these bounds on AI. We need to know that our partners and our colleagues have the same views that we do, and we have agreements on them. We especially need control of fully autonomous weapons and AI-enhanced cyber weapons. We've been at cyber war for decades. It's been mostly financial, and then it became information social, but we need an international agreement on what can and cannot be done, and oversight bodies for that. So how do we program in control systems that constrain decision-making of our systems, that build the robustness, the trust, the explainability that we need? How do we develop the kill switches so that it can't run rogue, so that we don't get Terminator 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, right? We are in charge. These are tools to enhance our lives. Frankly, I would rather be free to write fiction than have AI write my fiction and I clean the kitchen. So how do we do that? How do we make them our tool and control our tool rather than vice versa. One of the big things we need to do is to stay engaged, right? If we hand everything off to the engineers and technologists, and we don't engage in the arts and sciences and understanding of what the value of what we're using is, we lose the benefit of it. So education, public awareness, bring everyone together. Bring the ethicists, the lawyers, the artists, the musicians, the engineers. Bring the team together. I know with the young people that I work with, they're already used to working in teams. They enjoy working in diverse teams. Frankly, I love working with them because they teach me things I never thought about and show me ways to do things that are simpler. And some of that's because they know how to use these tools in their narrow space where it's important to them. How do we expand that tool use so that we guide where our AI goes and it remains our tool? We don't become its tool. I mean, it looks creative because we're asking it cool questions, but we seem to think that's the AI. No, those are the cool questions you're asking it, and it's digging everywhere to find the answer that you're looking for. If you could dig through the data as fast as AI could, you'd be just as creative. So we need to do a lot of scenario planning. Where do we expect the AI to be useful? How do we expect to have it help us? And then test it. Test the edge cases. Test it in unusual environments. See where it fails and put in safeguards against it hitting the third rail. So to prevent AI from becoming a black swan event, we need to adopt a multi-layer approach that includes ethical guidelines, transparency, robust engineering, strong regulation, and global cooperation. AI systems with strong human oversight, fail-safes, and kill switches can protect us from unanticipated consequences of autonomy and AI. And by taking this proactive and collaborative approach, we can turn AI into a great tool to have decisions happen faster, to have recommendations happen faster that we understand, and to build and harness the greatness of AI without having it cause an unexpected technical catastrophe, which would be a black swan event. So I hope you will help us in harnessing the benefits of AI for improving society without having it take us all over, unlike Doctor Who there. So thank you very much, and I look forward to questions.
That was great. Now that we've kind of doubled into AI, now to autonomy robotics, it is my honor to bring up to the stage Dr. Bob Sadowski.
So I'm going to take, can you hear me now? So I'm going to take a little bit different take. Great talk, Cindy. I've known her for a long time. In terms of what it is that we're trying to do for autonomy and robotics. Okay, in terms of a sort of black swanish type scenario that we've seen out there. These are not the official opinions of the Department of Defense, and I'm going to say that right now because I'm going to use a lot of movie references, but movie references provide a really good common context to kind of think about some of the things that can occur. So you heard the dystopian future that Ray kind of laid out for us, or Doctor Who Ray, in terms of what might be going on in terms of this future where now we've got autonomous and AI systems basically running the planet, and we are nothing more than servants to the robot overlords. I kind of joked when I first started talking about robotics in the Army about making sure it's the robot that dies first. Let's make sure the robot dies first, so I will be the first one who's taken out by the robot overlords, as I like to say. But the joke I'd like to talk about that is it's really about trading, instead of trading soldiers' lives, it's trading robotic lives. And we're going to see a rapid acceleration within this. We're sort of at like the cusp of the changing character of war. Now, from a military perspective, there's been several black swan events, but let's take some within the last century or so. Think about the end of World War I. We had this thing called no man's land. No man's land was only about 250, 300 meters wide, but basically it was an area where you could not maneuver against and do anything effectively. Well, everybody had a tank, everybody had a plane, everybody had a radio. It was the Germans who put that together in a few select formations to create a sort of Schwerpunkt or the Blitzkrieg sort of doctrine. They took technology, combined it together in such a way to produce an advantage that allowed them to wreak havoc. Think about IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan. Probably that's something else. Very simple devices that cause challenges in a counterinsurgency campaign. More recently, in terms of no man's land is no longer 200 to 300 meters wide. It's what? 6 to 10 kilometers of space in Ukraine, where basically nothing moves, it's all seen, and unmanned systems are going after the crewed platforms with devastating effect. And this is all done with aerial robots. They do have some ground robots carrying aerial robots as well. But think about the impact that first-person view drones have had in terms of how we fight. Now, if you think about that, I can take that to every domain. I can take that to the sea domain, look at unmanned surface vessels and swarming with unmanned surface vessels. It's been shown in Ukraine as well. Heck, they were using Starlink for crying out loud to control these things over the horizon, so to speak. The whole idea now that we can take sort of these types of systems to gain an asymmetric advantage also provides opportunities for adversaries we're not thinking about as we move towards this future. In terms of where I see the next big areas that are going on up there, there's a lot of investment. It's probably in what I would call humanoid robots. I call it robot arms in the wild. But in terms of the military domain, think about what you can do with things with legs, things with arms and legs. You know, we're all facing in the world sort of demographic challenges where the recruiting base of those soldiers that we need to have do the tough combat tasks. I could use humanoid robots and logistics in certain areas, but take that to its logical extreme. How do I make these effective in a military domain? I mean, we've all seen the sort of teleoperated ones where they're trying to do with either be Optimus, pick your favorite humanoid robotics. There's billions of dollars going into this right now. They're not military effective. Well, what do I need to make these systems military effective? I like to take sort of context from life. I was watching my young daughter, and as a roboticist, I'm closing my eyes. I can touch my hand to my nose so easily. It's instinctive. Because for years, we've trained our neural network to be able to respond. When watching my daughter grow up, she could grasp big things, but she didn't have what's known as fine motor control. Think about what that takes in terms of what we're going to need to do to make these systems be effective. And once we do, to get to the sort of dystopian vision, is how can I get this marriage between neuromorphic sort of circuits and networks coupled with the fear of realizable physical systems and added with adaptation. Okay, how many folks here have worked with DNNs or CNNs? A couple folks, right? How much adaptation, how much real learning actually occurs on those systems? Not much at all. It's all done what? Back on-prem. It's all done retraining in the cloud. There is no adaptation. And so if you think about where you can go from a simulation framework as we look forward to these sort of neuromorphic processors that are individually tuned, that we can speed up that process and get a realistic simulation framework, I can now develop some devastating capability that does not have the I's and W's, the indicators and warnings, until it's a little bit too late. So imagine a pack of robot dogs that can now go across the battlefield at near cheetah speed so you can't be taken out and basically penetrate a defensive line. Okay, or do that in a homeland security scenario as well. Okay, so, and I do actually like using movies as an example. So I remember Grey Goo from many years ago, right? Grey Goo, the idea that we're gonna have these little things that basically self-replicate, take over the world, and now all that's left is Grey Goo. The best depiction of that in any film I've seen is Keanu Reeves, which was The Day the Earth Stood Still, which is a remake of kind of what Doctor Who was talking about back from the 60s and 70s, if I remember correctly, where basically they had a bunch of robots that patrolled the universe to keep people from becoming too aggressive. And so the famous, Klaatu, Brada, Nikto, sort of phrase that comes out there. But think about Gort. Gort actually was a series turned into be the killer robot, ultimate killer robot, who basically wiped off the face, if you remember the movie, wiped off the face with the Grey Goo. A self-replicating system that only had one idea, and it was optimized to do one thing. So where does that bring us to today in terms of what it is that we are trying to achieve from a robotics and autonomy perspective within the, and I'll talk about the Army. So my boss, I call myself the Army Chief Roboticist. Anybody go down to the military tactical wheel conference they had in DC? He kind of said, I talked to this guy, he likes to say he's the Army Chief Roboticist, I'm the Senior Roboticist. Love General Ramey, okay? So that's great, I've got a 4-star who absolutely loves robots. He loves robots because what he wants to do is create human-machine integrated formations. Getting back to what Dr. Bedell what Cindy was talking about, Dr. Bedell, is the fact that we are absolutely looking for making sure that as we bring robotics and autonomous systems within our military formations, we are focused on the ethics of humans making the complex decision-making tasks and the ambiguity, the fog and friction of war. That's what's the important part that the humans need to do. Let's optimize for that, and then let the robots optimize for what we used to call the dull, dirty, and dangerous type of missions out there, so that now as I build this sort of group formation, we can compel will in an appropriate way with minimal loss of life. So his context, I like to say, let the robot die first. He's absolutely all about unmanned, no blood on first contact. Send a robot dog through the door if I'm doing room clearing or room breaching operations. Make sure I have robots out front to figure out where the enemy is, both air and ground, and allow me to kind of interact with them. And we've got to do this now because we don't want to be like the Ukrainians with all of a sudden a bunch of kit, and we got to put it together while we're actually seriously being aggressed. So that is part of the whole idea of these human-machine integrated formations. Going to start off with armored and infantry, and then we're going to close the combined arms fist with doing fires, protection, air defense, and engineers. And I like to say I need the other part of the fist, which is modular open systems architecture, because I don't know which AI model is going to rule the world at some point, but we know that as foundational models get more powerful, getting back to your ability to simulate the world, as those models become more powerful and we have access to the sort of data that we need to train these systems, then I also need communications. I also need to have a sort of autonomy stack that I can kind of grow and make better. So I actually have the two-handed fist to make this a reality. Now, this is kind of like an interesting sort of challenge for us right now, because there's a lot of desire to do a lot of movement, not a lot of money. Okay, and how do we bring in industry? So we realize that we want to be able to tap into industry and leverage industry where we can. Okay, so let me go bring this back to another one of my more fun movies that are out there to watch as well. What are some of the things that we need to kind of get into these systems? I kind of talked about the ability to adapt real time. Most learning systems cannot adapt real time. Even if you look at what they're doing with Omniverse and Isaac, and I know NVIDIA's here, it's got some great tools, that assumes you have perfect knowledge that those actuators work the same way every time. As they degrade over time, and I'm degrading over time, I'm getting wider and slower, right? I've adapted my ability to be able to find things. It is very impossible if I had a screw that I was trying to put underneath this table right here. I have pretty good proprioception to know exactly where that screw needs to go. If I drop it, I can feel for it, find it, and plug it back in. Think about any of the robotics and autonomous systems, particularly the humanoid ones. That's a really complex task. It's taken, evolution, but it's also taken me years to develop those sorts of skill sets to be able to incorporate that. You win that battle, and you can do some amazing things. So let's go back to Terminator 1. You know, the original model with Arnold Schwarzenegger, it's at the end of the movie, they blow off his legs, and what does that robot do? It improvises, right? It wasn't programmed to crawl along the ground like that. It had no legs. It improvised. It even jumped on a conveyor belt to move faster to get towards its goal. So again, there are things in there that I'm actually quite happy that AGI is not coming anytime soon, particularly within an embodied physical space like on a humanoid robot, because we actually efficiently process with really low energy a lot of data as a human, thank God. So again, I do worry about some of the things that are coming on. Now let's take the flip side to it. Where can AI go bad? So one of the challenges you have with first-person view drones is what? Obviously, they're first-person view drones. Someone's sticking that shape charge all the way into its final effects. So what's the obvious thing you go after? The command link. So you start jamming the command link. That's going on. So then what's the counter response to that? Well, once I lock onto a target, very similar to how several of our missiles work, I don't need any more. The system, the seeker actually will guide it in there. So that's actually now what they're doing. This is all public domain knowledge right now. So think about AI as it goes further and further better, and Cindy kind of talked about that, in terms of making sure we're able to hit the targets that the commander needs to take out, okay? And this is where it gets kind of icky, in the sense that right now we're going after platforms. There's no question that in a military scenario, I should be able to take out an enemy combatant platform, a tank, a field artillery system, an integrated air defense system. Where it starts to get icky is when you talk about going after people with an autonomous systems. Why is that icky, if you think about it? The icky part is, what happens when I go like this, according to the rules of war? I've surrendered. How do you surrender to a robot? How do I train an AI to be able to show the signs of surrendering? Ironically, if I'm in front of a tank and they're surrendering in front of the tank, technically I can still take out the tank because it's still a legitimate piece of kit to go after. But these are the types of issues you think about. How are we going to get these algorithms to be able to think like that? Which is why I kind of think, you know, it's interesting, because I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to prove that to the appropriate level of rigor that we will want, that you can actually detect intent to that sort of level. Because then you get the confusion of, oh, the guy's carrying a broomstick versus a shovel versus whatever. Is that really a rifle in their hand? So I can see, at least for the near term, that that would be probably one of those things when we talk about ethics that's going to be very hard to program, that we're going to have to worry about. The other piece that I kind of look at long term that's going to be a challenge is the idea of how do we get safety cases built around these systems. And this is where simulation absolutely comes to play. Most of the AI systems, particularly CNNs, DNNs, they're non-deterministic. We all know that. That's not exactly what your safety community wants, right? You have to have 1 part per million risk for a catastrophic event, usually injuring somebody or the equipment itself. Trying to show that with a non-deterministic system, the only way I can see us getting there and teasing out those edge cases is in a properly good simulation framework. The challenge is, because the way these systems are trained, in terms of CNNs and DNNs, the sim-to-real gap can give you unintended consequences, AKA the sort of black swan type events, because they're really exquisite pattern matchers that don't pattern match on the things that we do, right? I know Cindy was a colonel, right? So I know what a colonel means, not just what the text colonel next to her name actually indicated, again, 75% of them being male, for example. So the challenge that we're going to have is, how can we use the sim framework to not only train these things, pull out the edge cases, but it's got to do it in a sort of faster than real-time environment. If not, we're going to be stuck in testing, or we're not going to be able to get to the edge cases to get to the safety piece. Now, in large-scale combat operations, I hate to say it, that gets a little, you know, some of the rules get a little fuzzy, and Cindy kind of alluded to that as well, because guess what? The enemy's not going to follow those rules. We already know that they're not going to follow those rules. They're already not following those rules, right? So if you have an enemy that says, hey, now I can take these AI systems, basically Let's take any large metropolitan area, like say in the US. What if I want to shut down air transportation? Just fly into a plane engine with a tungsten rod. Really easy to do. You got to do it once or twice, that'll shut things down. Well, that'll just shut down the airport and maybe they'll jam those things. Well, where are the fuel bunkers located? They're just big white circles that when you look from the overhead, I don't need any sophisticated navigation techniques to go down there and say, well, I got to somehow set those on fire. Well, look at what the Ukrainians are doing. How easy is it to set basically that on fire using something that we've been using since probably the 1900s in terms of thermite? Aluminum shavings plus rust with a rocket engine motor igniter. Something very easy to create, and you can actually now take some of these robotic and autonomous systems and do devastating effects. Land on a natural gas pipeline. They all have expansion joints, they come out. You can see them on Google Maps. You don't even have to do anything sophisticated. So when you think about where you can potentially go from a AI and autonomy and a robotic situation, there's a lot of bad effect that can go out there. However, I got to be positive in the sense that, hey, you know, we all know that bad people are going to do bad things. But in the end, what is it that we want to do? We want to bring everybody home whole and alive, to quote General Milley. So why would I not want to exploit what I can do with robotics and autonomous systems as fast as I can amongst all the different domains? And why would I not want to explore this within the military domain in particular, and where we're now going to have a lot of co-use of equipment that comes out of commercial. Call it COTS to MOTS, if you want to call it, from commercial off the shelf to military off the shelf. We're going to have to leverage that. I mean, SpaceX has been doing it, right? Anybody know how many space-rated components SpaceX uses, probably? I'm going to venture a guess. They're using automotive. They just use more of it, just duplicate it. It's cheap, it's good enough, it's good to go. Satellite burns out after 5 years, that's okay, right? It's a very sort of different approach. So I don't want to leave you on this note that we don't need to take the journey. We absolutely need to take this journey because we know that in the future battlefield, it's going to be transparent. We need to make the transparent battlefield work for us. As I like to tell folks, we need to own the rain because that's the one place where the drones don't fly very well and you don't see very well. And then I'll always like to end up on a joke in terms of the ultimate Black Swan event, and some people know this because I was in an XCOM meeting this morning and they're in the room, but there's this guy named Cliff High who has run a web bot that scrapes the internet to come and do linguistic sort of analyses. And so he's made a couple famous predictions over the last 10 or 15 years. His latest one, which would be a really good Black Swan event, has to deal with UAPs, and 39 days after the president-elect had a podcast with Joe Rogan. This was an actual prediction that was made. So think about a bunch of UAPs running around in an alien invasion, which is supposed to be tomorrow, by the way. And that's going to be when I get off the stage, because I've got to go catch my flight. But I appreciate your time, and I'm really looking forward to the questions. Hit most of my points.
As he's brought us to the reality of autonomy and robotics, and yes, we've known each other for many, many years, joking around. It's my honor to bring you over now to XR and the metaverse, and I couldn't do this right without the P.O. Stry Wonder Twins. So it's my honor to bring Dr. Jeremy Lehman and Marwar Bahiritz. Thank you.
All right.
Hey.
All right. Good afternoon. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So
The two twins, right?
that's right. We'll feed off each other here. So no, really appreciate being here today, talking about the singularity paradox with Black Swan. You heard about AI, phenomenal discussion there with Dr. Bedell. And then, of course, Dr. Sadowski, world-renowned roboticist for the Army here. Definitely learning a lot from him. I think, Marwan, we're going to take you down more towards the whole idea of a metaverse and virtual reality, extended reality, put a whatever letter in front of the R, the whole idea of simulating real life, right? We've heard about the various movies and the entertainment industry and the idea of that dystopian society, and survival of the fittest kind of idea. But we look also at where virtual reality is going, and not just movies, but in your everyday life, right? So you're seeing it, whether it's in gaming to decompress, and that's a form of entertainment. You're using it in your Internet of Things. You're using it in your daily work. You could be making decisions on financial advice from using bots to help you make investments, whatever it is. What's interesting about that is, you start to lose a little bit, I think, of that idea of reality in terms of your physical presence and what that means to your now soon-to-be digital presence as you kind of engage more into that. You see that in movies, right? You have like Ready Player One. They put on the headset and they're now immersed in that virtual reality, and they're doing things like you would in real life. Is that a good thing? It could make training better, but what are the alternatives to that? Do you start to lose a bit of reality? Does it disconnect you from human relationships or real life events or things? And does it affect your decision making? Simulation can help with that. Simulation is virtual, right? We use that to help us with our everyday training. Marwan will get into what we in the Army are trying to do with respect to that. And we spend a lot of time assessing and addressing challenges that can come as you promote more immersed reality into the lives of our soldiers, for instance. That takes effect in terms of their ability to make decisions, how they interact with their peers and colleagues and superiors, but also with the adversary. So who here remember, or maybe you recall, the Stanford Prison Experiment, 1971? A handful of you out there. If you've not, I'm sure you may have read about it. That was essentially a simulation. It was a live simulation. There was no virtual reality at the time, right? There was nothing there from that perspective, no technology. It was essentially a professor, Professor Zimbardo, out at Stanford, who wanted to figure out how inmates react to authoritarian guards. And at what point do you break those prisoners, right? And it was supposed to be a 14-day experiment. It was shut down in 6 days because they found that the prisoners adapted so quickly, as well as the guards, to their roles that it actually broke them down. Not only broke them down, but in some cases, the participants became feral because the trauma was so intense. And that was with no technology. That was with live people, live faces, interaction. Now enter adding technology to that, where now you don't have a face. It's all anonymous. You don't have a way to shut it down. You're now introducing more of it. It's not just a somewhat controlled, although there's critics that say that was not controlled, which it predominantly wasn't. And the effects of that are still going on today from the respect of those participants and how they felt about that, but also what came out of in terms of the lessons learned. And that's what really, that brought in what we all know now as the Institutional Review Board concept, right? The IRB. That is a result of that. So in the virtual world, we're going to have to look at something similar. We're going to have all these anonymous agents. You're going to have autonomy, whether it's robotics augmenting, whether it's AI agents or other avatars, which are actual humans, but you don't know who they are, right? So there's a lot of lessons learned to gain from that. And then I can tie that to the idea of cyberbullying, right? Cyberbullying, if you have teenagers that game, it's not mostly social media. Most of your cyberbullying comes from online gaming platforms such as Minecraft or Roblox. And today's youth, they really don't know how to interact and be able to make those decisions, whether or not those actors have bad things or not, right? So in terms of training, what we have to look for are technologies, frameworks, and architectures that are going to help us to address these challenges. Yes, using virtual reality and immersive reality will help to make us better trained and improve our proficiency and make our warfighters stronger, but there's a balance.
Yeah.
Marwan?
So thanks, Jeremy. I think I want to expand on it a little bit on simulation aspect, but one thing to bring in is a little bit of context on where, not just the technology, but the culture associated with it, the energy that comes with it, it's very important, right? So it's not just the VR and immersive technologies and everything. I think that's we've seen in the past couple of years, right? There's a leap ahead of fusion between the computing resources, the LLM of the world, and the cloud environment. I mean, the cloud computing and the various other technology with social networking that kind of advances this LLM that we call Gen AI, I call the foundation, what we call the metaverse for us in the world. So I think in response for that, I mean, we know not only we are engaging right now in a huge modernization effort to bringing in this kind of leading edge technologies, but what we recognize also is to bring in the culture associated with it so we can endure and continue to modernize, to bring in these immersive technologies, insert it and be effective. I think, again, it's not necessarily just the technology, but hey, we need to achieve the end means, which is training the warfighter, make them lethal, to use AI and immersive technologies. So I think what we call that is that enduring framework, if you will, we call that digital transformation. So that's what the underpinning of what we call, the metaverse in our world. So I'll tell you what we've done here in PO Stride. We said, okay, well, let's, kind of form our own organization based on these kind of principles that allow us to continuously evolve the simulation world in the VR, the XR, the augmented reality that you're going to see there on the floor, and I'm going to talk a little bit more, but also the AI and the how. That's what I call the how, the AI, the software platform, and so on. So we established an office within our command, right? I mean, it's not like an added layer, but it's actually more of a added, tip of the spear organization, with a lot of intelligent, folks within the organization and outside to kind of break in and bring in these technologies across our portfolio and bring in the talent and, associated with it to do that, and we call that ATI. So I think that's basically that, we're changing our business construct to bringing in the technologies and addressing the challenges that are, that we're talking about and the previous speakers were talking about. So we've done that, with our elements. The other things that we did is like, okay, well, now, we are not only just going to go ahead and build and field in the VR and AR capability, but what is our sustainment framework that allow us to do that? And how do we, kind of maintain, that, those elements while we're going to, instantiate the metaverse. And the metaverse for us in our training domain is, is the synthetic training environment, right? That's how, that's what we immerse in the, the warfighters into kind of bring them in through the whole echelon of warfighting capability. So what we did, we come up with these kind of pillars, right? I think there's, on these pillars, like on the digital transformation, start with unified software platform. That's basically, think of it as the verse where we develop capabilities across, our command. That is, traditionally, you have your industry partner, you have your own software platform, you innovate in the soul, and then you bring it in. Now we're creating a unified framework where you come in and you can participate in enhancing the verse that we have. So I think that's something that we're really excited on. I think we're basically bringing that capability to provide us that bridge for continuous innovation and sustaining that verse. The second thing is that bridging. We're an acquisition community, so our job is to bring capability and filter to the soldier right as quick as possible, bring them in the hand soldiers. So what we did, we bridged in with this particular unified framework is to bring in the S&T community, where you bring in capabilities, bring in these immersive technologies that we've seen in our DevCom centers and even autonomy, and we bring it in and we can evaluate it, and we look at these various technology stack, bring in soldiers. There's a lot of excitement in our innovation cell, and we bring out of these capabilities and version into our production baseline to go out and move out to a soldier, either for a soldier touch point to provide feedback in those immersive type of technologies, or even something, to field on a baseline that it's connected. So the verse is also connected to ranges, right? This training verse that we build capabilities, we train, but it's also connected to the various ranges that we have, and we're all over the world, from our live art ranges to virtual synthetic to cyber ranges. We have vision to connect all that. We've already started connected all the live, the CTCs, if you will. So we're all connected there, but these capabilities that you see on the floor, that we test and everything, the immersive type of technologies, we'll go ahead and field. So we've done that, on the platform. The other pillar that I would say is data, and I think, to maintain that verse, and it's so important, right? Data. So there are a lot of challenges with that. The good news is we're making a lot of leap ahead in terms of like decoupling data from our systems, bringing in or kind of reason with it. But there's still a lot of challenges, specifically on the policy realm, if you will, because our training data, if you will, data is owned by the ranges, not by the material developer, if you will. But these are very important things, element for data. And then, goes into, okay, now you got data, you got a software platform, what are you going to do with it? And now the magic of AI come in, right? So, where the AI is like the breakbone of our synthetic, envision our synthetic environment core through live, virtual, and constructive use cases. So we're very excited. We've been accelerating for the past, 18 months towards this effort, working with industry partners, Silicon Valley partners as well. What we did in the Army is like, okay, how do we do this more efficient manner? And we recognize, this is an area where the training and the operational domain is going to blend in. And our office works very closely with our counterparts within within the acquisition community and S&T to form that particular pipeline that allow us to build the intelligent algorithms touching intelligent observer controller, for example. That's like the cool observer coaching that aid and guide and provide, advice to a commander at a training environment, to combat realism, where we're bringing in autonomous algorithm, intelligent algorithm, fusing it into our targets to maneuver targets to bring in complexity, of the maneuver at the maneuver range, for combat realism, to collecting terrain data. I mean, you can't have a verse without a true no-kidding digital terrain. So collecting data from the actual ranges of the CTCs and home station, geospatial data, refine it using intelligent algorithm and prevention to be able to do that. So we're doing that, doing some of that. The other thing I would say is, you can't have AI without network. I mean, you have data, you have to collect data in your transport layers. We generate data across our ranges, but we want to bring them so we can act on it and reason on it for this type of application, but also for, for simulation, for our training, so we can train anywhere. I mean, that's essential for our metaverse, if you will. So what we've done is also we're trying to employ AI to kind of orchestrate and build this multi-layer transport, using, various 5G and satellite hybrid to kind of orchestrate the various, pathway using AI. So very exciting elements on the AI aspect that we're, that kind of build again the fabric of the metaverse. Now I'll bring you to to the verse. What does that mean? That's the what, right? Right now, you probably heard the program is called Synthetic Training Environment. That is the foundation of training verse, if you will, where the Army has challenged us to modernize the training environment and bring it in, kind of one single type of ecosystem that trains soldier from his unit as an individual all the way to a small collective in a virtual environment to all the way to a live training. And we've done using all mechanism of digital transformation, AI and data to basically enhance that. I think we've recently have, done very great accomplishment in terms of the collective training in the virtual environment. We immersed in virtual reality. Soldiers are immersed into synthetic training in a virtual environment, conducting collective ground and air maneuver, as well as augmented reality on that, in that domain. We've also kind of, apply AI and computer vision to replace miles. I think you've heard of, we've prototyping a lot of capabilities with computer vision to move from a laser-based to object detection type of capability, and we're working with our counterparts in Michigan that they have that expertise as well. So we're trying to do that. Now, so that's how called the verse 1.0. Okay, what's next, right? As we field these 1.0 capabilities, we're addressing the current weapon fleet with this XR, immersive type of technologies driven by AI. We're going to focus on autonomous, intelligent on 2.0. These are emerging weapons, robotics, intelligent weapons that are going to be coming part of the unit that we start seeing exposed to a unit to come in, where we're going to take this verse, Steve verse 2.0, to kind of address and exercise those things. Very exciting time. It's going to be in the future. In this coming months or so, to bring in those intelligent, no kidding, but we have to do it in sensitive manner. So
Yeah, so Marwan passionately talked about all the things the Army's doing technically, right? From technology, immersive capabilities, things that we're going to provide soldiers in the future. A lot of it experimental. He mentioned soldier touch points and user feedback to collect that data, safety certifications and things that for those capabilities. However, there are many, not only physical, but psychological characteristics and concerns and challenges that have to be addressed as we continue to push the envelope to really get to where the Army wants to go, to provide that fully immersive user experience as for soldier training. So some of the concerns, over-reliance on virtual training. Again, I mentioned earlier, your kids are immersed in their games and they may hit cyberbullying or they may run into challenges of being too immersed and trying to pull them away. Do you think our soldiers get like that? Do you think they're going to get immersed and it'll be hard for them to maybe sense reality versus what they're training in? Perhaps. That might be a concern that we're going to have to look at. So building that resilience and ensuring that they still continue to get the hands-on experience, that physical connection with humanity to address some of those psychological areas. Of course, the physical aspects, the load on the soldier, putting all these devices and sensors, and we still have to do it. We got to collect that data. But how do we do that so it's not burdening the soldier and putting too much load on them physically? And of course, psychologically, we want to train them to be the best fighting force. We don't want to desensitize them, right? That's a major, and that's something I think our children or the younger generation is starting to get desensitized. They're playing games that are killing a bunch of people or whatever it is, and that there's some psychological effects there. So how do we combat that? And then with all the stuff that Marwan talked about, data and data streams, collecting essentially personal data on the soldier to create that virtual or digital presence, as well as all of the mission and tactics that go along with that. How do you cyber secure all of that? All of it. So everything about the soldier and their personal lives, because in order for their digital presence to work across platforms and various environments, it has to be essentially a carbon copy of that person. How do you protect everything about the human? It's more than just what we put on the internet today. It's it furthers that. So cyber hardening everything from the environment, the data that's shared, and certifying and validating that the agents or even the human avatars that they're interacting with are trustworthy. What are the frameworks for enabling that? Because right now I can get AI from any vendor. It's not certified or anything. There's no governing board, to Dr. Bettle's point and her thing, to look at that from an ethics perspective. So who knows what's behind that? It could have been a Chinese autonomous agent, for all I know, that's trying to act like a peer or a colleague in the game and trying to collect information from you. So how do we address that? So we're moving forward. We're going further into this kind of new world, but we're not necessarily taking the lessons learned from the prison experiment and applying it. And we need to start doing that now in order to build the frameworks, the architectures, and everything that Marwan was talking about a bit ago to enable a very high-end and great training experience, but it has to be safe.
I just want to add, I think we have 30 seconds. I want to give you a tangible, no kidding, realistic type of thing what we recently had with computer vision, with AI. Traditionally, Miles is unclassified laser tag type of capability. Now with our prototyping, looking at data and doing object type of detection, we quickly start raising that, the bar of classification. Now we're identifying patterns, we're identifying maneuver and things like that. That is traditionally is not an unclass, untrusted type of data. Easily with just AI, right? With just computer vision, we start going these smart type of sensors that we exercise in weapon that these are the challenges that we're dealing with right now and how we can, build this resilient security architecture that's still affordable to be able to do that. I think we're over.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
I'm gonna kick this off. Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. I'd like to call all the panelists back up. Please have a seat.
Oh, I'm going to take a comfy. Where are you going to sit? You sit here.
Any? I'll be standing.
I'll sit next to Cindy. Take that one.
All right, so now the audience gets to ask the questions, but since I've been waiting patiently,
lights are
I'm
bright.
going to start off the questioning. To the panel, and anyone can answer, I'd like to know, what is artificial intelligence? Because when I watch these movies with Marvel and Jarvis and things like that, to me, artificially intelligent is what you've been talking about, adaptability, where they can come in and be adaptable. I don't see that anywhere with what we have today. So I ask you, is there really any artificial intelligence right now? You want to sit in the middle.
I'll take the joke response first, and then I'll let. So the joke response always was, what is artificial intelligence? It's something that we don't have an algorithm for. Because once you get an algorithm for it, hey, I'm good to go.
Learning.
It's machine learning. There you go. But I figured you could probably augment on that, Cindy.
Well, the thing is, it's very artificial, but not yet very intelligent. So it is all machine learning, right? It's diving into the data with various programming tools to see critical patterns and teach a non-human entity how to do something that we can already do generally. Can we take a series of narrow machine learning and cascade them to become more generalized? We can. Takes time. You can be very fast in a narrow space where the data is refined, the algorithm is perhaps complex, but it is narrow in what its role is. But how do we build that into a more dynamic and more generalized tool? That's really the hard thing. And, you know, STRI is getting after a lot of that with the immersive training. How immersive does it have to be realistic enough to stick and to allow you to respond the right way in changing environments? That's a human training issue that they have. It's also the training issue we have with AI and machine learning. And so how do we combine and generalize and learn from each other's roles? I think it's critical, but it is all fancy machine learning.
Right, thank you. So as you can see, we have microphones in the aisles over here. If anyone would like to ask a question, please come up, and our panelists are waiting for, yes, please.
Okay, it's very bright.
Good afternoon. Listening to all these efforts from a PEO, STRI, or something like that at that level, bringing it back down to the frontline formations, what can we be doing to start helping at the top level and kind of meeting in the middle to help these innovation efforts and AI projects and that kind of thing?
So,
Go ahead.
good. There's a lot. I mean, I think we'll go back to just, you know, it's a vast field, right? When we say, yeah, we're going to do AI, we're going to touch all these training systems, or we're going to train a brigade commander, or, a commander, all the way to individual. It's, I think what we found to be working right is to kind of simplify to work on a thread, on certain threads that's going to bring in the more ROI, if you will, the tangible for that. Let's see, for example, right now, we start on a squad on platoon on squad type of maneuver for, how are we going to bring in AI to do that to the computer vision, replacing Miles 1, observer controller that traditionally you would have at a CTC. Now it's a more of an intelligent machine that's communicating and whispering on the platoon leader and say, hey, you should have maneuvered this way and not that way, using, just small scale type of exercise, that level, blending in some of the immersive synthetic, if you will, to help that platoon command. Versus like, hey, well, I'm going to train a brigade commander or a division. I think we're starting from that point. It also gives us the opportunity to collect data from a live range, actual instrumentation, blending in with like, the simulation engines that we have. So.
Yeah, I would, Marwan's looking at from technology and kind of the use case, I'm looking at maybe from a business and acquisition aspect. We really need more innovative ideas in terms of helping to develop the requirements of those capabilities of the future. Not to overgeneralize, but the average age of Army folks developing those requirements is pretty high. That have, and to be honest, are less digitally native than our young new privates in 18, 19, 20, those. So I want to see folks from the ground there come up and start explaining how you are using these environments. You grew up in it. You grew up in these gaming environments. How do you translate that into a training requirement in the future for immersive, complete immersion in a virtual reality or a metaverse? So I would definitely like to see more of those innovations come up from soldiers or other military servicemen and women, but also all you vendors, you have the next generation you're pulling in, bring them in and have them helping you architect these things, develop the requirements. They understand it natively. So I think that would be helpful.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. How you doing? Captain Schiffelbein, ASNRDA, DAS and Air Ground. A little curious, right? Black Swan events are those unpredictable kind of collection of different factors, right? That creates a paradigm shift, right? I thought the Berlin Wall was an interesting one. You could maybe argue within IT here recently, Amazon could potentially be considered sort of a black swan. However, moving forward, right, when it comes to the singularity, just wondering, what are some of the different factors are you as a group looking for? Like, you can't predict a black swan, right? But there's always those indications that are out there. While, we could, with machine learning, we're just adding to machine learning, there is, what's also being talked about here at the event is like quantum computing, right? Quantum computing is going to change the entire paradigm in how we manage and analyze data, where you could go from a very simple, machine learning algorithm and you pump it into a quantum computer and who knows what you may get out on the other side, right? So are there some of those things you're looking at and kind of for predictions? And I know that there's been different views as far as when the singularity might happen, right? Some think like in the 2030s, some think out further. Other folks, with some of the things I just mentioned, may see it could be at any time, right? And there's instances where that we have had AI systems do things that are unpredictable that needed to be shut down, kind of with that kill switch that you mentioned. So just wondering what your thoughts were there.
Would anyone of you like to take that?
Well, I'll attack it in kind of two ways, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember hearing Kurzweil talk at the War College many, many years ago about the singularity. And I kept watching it get punted a couple of years because the compute platforms were not there. And the challenge with quantum computing, and they'll solve it at some point, is the ability not only to do that, the number of qubits that you need to do, but to load it and then extract it in such a way and do it at temperatures that don't require liquid helium dewars effectively. The other thing about the singularity, and which is like the title of this was a singularity paradox, was that you can have a really, really smart system out there trained on the appropriate data that lacks entire common sense for the real world. And every one of you have probably had that happen on Google Maps. When you ask to go somewhere and you're like, that is the dumbest way, I am never gonna take that route. Okay, so that's an example of things that we need to kind of consider and figure out how do you get common sense. I don't think we're gonna solve it anytime soon, which is why I'm not as worried about that sort of AGI ruling the world. But think about that in your life. What I am worried about is the over-reliance on AI expert systems to give you, and I'll use another movie context, Idiocracy. Not a great movie, but basically the guy wakes up 500 years because he was dumb enough to do an army experiment on hibernation, right? And he's the smartest man on the planet who can actually do something physical, right? Like read a map nowadays, right? Anyway, I'll let you kind of opine on that.
So the thing about the black swan is that it comes unexpectedly. What we try to do, all of us, is invest in technology to understand it, harness it, and create a revolution in military affairs that we control. So the outcome is not a black swan, it's an advantage for our side. So I think that's the key thing is the right investments, and we can't always predict that. I mean, if 10% of your investments are succeeding, you're actually doing phenomenally well if you're at the very fundamental area of research. But controlling that and understanding that so you can take advantage of it more quickly than your adversaries. I mean, whatever realm you're looking at, whether it's technology, financial, economic, socioeconomic, it's controlling that understanding and doing enough in-depth research that you do have that understanding. And that's across all of the domains. So we're still making amazing discoveries in material science with additive manufacturing and diving into the behavior data of materials and then predicting lighter, less expensive, higher performing materials that we can actually build using additive manufacturing. So the tools span all of research, and it's investing in critical places to make sure that we control the outcomes of those domains and they don't surprise us. Technological risk is also something we need to pay attention to when we do research.
And we're fans of AI here.
We are.
So don't take that the wrong way. I need, in order to make tactically relevant robots that can actually maneuver across country effectively, do things in buildings and a few other bits, I actually need the AI type of behaviors that I can get from there. But there's a lot of other tools out there that Cindy was alluding to. Think about protein folding, right? There's like 40 different narrow AIs that DeepFold is using to basically get to protein folding so you can figure out the right lock and key mechanism. I hate to tell you something, as brilliant as humans are, they ain't gonna get the quantum mechanics right. They need the statistical inferences in order to be able to do that. So there's examples where some of these expert systems, and they don't have to make common sense decisions, can actually provide great benefit. So I just want to make sure that we kind of take that point that there is a valid use for these systems, and they're finding that people who are leveraging AI are being more productive even in the research space because it's helping them discover
More quickly.
More quickly.
Ray, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think one thing is, as we looked at the Singular event, you almost pull back like an atom. And the atom across all of this is data. And when you look at it in the exchange of data, we're getting to a world now of hardware and software agnostic, even transport agnostic. And what you find out in Singular events even today, or where the Singular events are going in the future, it's really not a technological issue, but a non-technological issue. So if you look at AI, how is the infrastructure set up with the supercomputing required for it? How is the security placed to it? The policies that have to be changed from anything that's AI to anything that's a kinetic effect to allow for those things to happen on the battlefield. And the last one, which I don't think, you take a step back, if you look at what's going on at PEO STRI and other organizations, and you look at what they're trying to do in the training, it's setting the culture. You will find out that the adaptation of any type of technology or adaptation of it to help prevent a Singular event is to making sure that the culture understands and the culture goes forward with it.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, right? I think what we're trying to build, at least on STRI, right? We're trying to build the warfighter to be the master of warfighting, not the master, right? And the master of the technology, right? So it's not the other way around. So at the end of the day, technology is enabling us to train, be ready, be effective, and be lethal. But at the end of the day, I want the adversary to be more afraid of our soldiers than actually the technology, right? So I want to make sure that that's the bread and butter. Is the technology serving the cause, not an AI, or not the other way around.
Right. Yes, Dr. Charles.
Charles Cohen with Cybernet Systems, not Cyberdyne, Cybernet. So a month ago, I responded to an SBIR solicitation which asked to leverage LLMs to help for document processing and all that. And it said, we want something that's the most advanced on the market, GPT-3, and we want it to be able to do video and audio and all that. And this was a month ago. And it was already way behind the times, right? It's already out there that you and I can use today. I think we are losing the race, right? Because it's corporations now that have the most powerful AI systems, not the military, let alone the United States. I'm not sure what my question is, but I'm terrified of that too. And I don't think that we'll be able to defend against the Singularity because we're not going to be behind it at all. So there we go. Happy Merry Christmas, by the way.
So you were just here to scare us, basically. All right. Would you like to? All right.
So,
Would you like to answer that? Go ahead.
yeah, I'll start, but I'm still not worried that the Singularity is coming. Some of our requests for proposals are because we want it with certain data, not with generalized worldwide data. So what may seem to be asking for something that's already solved is asking to apply what you think you've already solved to a new set of data with a new mission outcome. So think about the context when you look at those requests for proposals. The reason I don't believe the Singularity is coming anytime soon is because all of the best, I'll call them AI, they're machine learning, but all of the best AI are very narrow. We use them in incredibly well-defined spaces. The ones that are less successful are less bounded. And you need to be more of an expert to be able to use them well. And until we can get a series of narrow AIs that cascade to an ultimate answer, to get to general AI, I just don't think it's coming. Now, are there tools that can react so quickly that they could cause huge disruption? Yes. They exist in the cyber world. They exist in the financial world. If we don't use them properly, we can cause international crises. And that's a big concern of mine, both in just the economic space and the international competition with our peer competitors, but also in the personal space. You know, people who can be you online, spoof you, take over your financial world. Those are smaller, but they can happen to anybody in this room. That's pretty scary. Someone can take your life away online. So yeah, there are issues. Some of what we want to do is to take those tools that have already been developed and make sure they work in our lane, and then use them in the right context.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes. We have 2 questions here, so go ahead, ma'am.
So you mentioned 2 things in paradigm. I think paradigm shifts are very interesting. How do we relate to that? And then we're talking about adoption or diffusion of innovation. So in a room like this, from the top down and the bottom up, how do we help facilitate the culture change that will utilize these technologies in the best fashion?
Yeah, I could start with, so at least from our perspective, it comes to, I guess, for us, it's trust in the technology and what it's going to provide our solution to soldiers. And trust kind of comes with, is it standardized, right? So, and that's kind of the concern that I think one of the things that Marwan and I brought up, there's so much proliferation of AI capability. Everyone has a different definition of it. The concept is overloaded. It's kind of like open system architecture. What does it really mean? You know, AI is kind of the same thing. So when we get hit with so many different AI solution concepts and capabilities, it's hard to kind of differentiate, well, what will make sense for the solution? Can we trust it? Is it going to vendor lock us in? Is it, you know, there's lots of different things. And is it the right thing for the solution, the training solution that we want to provide? So I think as a community, there needs to be some work together, some collaboration to standardize what it means, at least in this community. Think of CISO for interoperability between simulations. There's got to be something similar for AI and how it will be incorporated into our training technologies in the future. And I'm speaking for, you know, from a PEO Stri Army perspective, but certainly for other, I would think, training paradigms. So between that and then, of course, you know, it's the continuously evolving bureaucracy of how we do acquisition as well, and whether or not those technologies even get a chance to get reviewed and looked at.
So I'll just, a couple initiatives that the Army's doing. One is the chief is a real big proponent of what's known as transformation in contact, particularly with robotics and autonomous systems, and they're not fully, autonomous. A lot of them are teleoperated. Let's buy some, put them in the hands of soldiers. The whole idea is put things in the hands of soldiers early, let them practice with them, let them get their hands dirty, and then tie in the development community much tighter so you can spin. And that's kind of also the purpose for the human-machine integrated formation. They'll announce a 2.0. Right now we're doing basically targeted brigades. It's going to go towards targeted divisions. And then the goal is to actually bring this technology faster, not using these standard acquisition processes, but hopefully informing the acquisition processes with what the requirement ultimately needs to be. Almost every active unit out there at the division plus level has these little innovation cells already. So they're already buying little bits and pieces. It's a little bit ad hoc. And one of the things that they're trying to do is to try to get their arms around that to take the best of breed and say maybe go out either with cyber opportunities, with directed requirements. The Army's went out with 5 directed requirements to kind of get after enhancing the speed of innovation within the force.
Yes, if we still have time, to get at your point about the cultures. We have established something called the software factory, where officers and soldiers and NCOs coming out of an operational unit can go and learn how to use machine learning to solve a problem they saw in their unit and build a tool that can then be deployed to the force. So that not only captures operational need, but also kind of the creativity of the young people who are digital natives. They came up living with these tools that we all had to learn in a much more draconian fashion. And these young people come in, solve a problem, learn how to code. Many of them already know how to code, but they learn how to code in a context that is needed for a controlled military environment. And then they get to go back out into an operational unit knowing who to get in touch with to help solve problems as they see them, and also how to advise them on the operational needs. And so it becomes a much more rapid cycle. It informs the research community of the operational need in a much more joined fashion, a much more collaborative fashion. And I think it's very, very useful. And also, we need to pull ideas up from the new, younger researchers and then help them define it along the planes where we know we need capabilities. And so, harvest new ideas and focus them where we need capabilities and try to find a balance for that within our resources. And it changes every year, but we keep focusing, keep narrowing, and harvest the best solutions that we can. Whether they come from our labs, small businesses, big businesses, academia, we harvest everywhere. And it's really important that we be a cohesive S&T economy. That's really what keeps our economic engine going in the U.S. is that free exchange of ideas and that super interdependence of the S&T community and the innovation community.
I'm sure you will have a lot more questions, but I'm sorry we are at time. So if we can have a round of applause for our esteemed panelists, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.